Now, the guy's name is Croupy, and Croupy is about 26 years old when all this starts, and he's living in New York. He's addicted to adult media. You know, images and videos of individuals having intercourse. This woman is in his life. Her name's Sissy, and Sissy is Croupy's wife. And none of this seems to affect their marriage, so, no harm, no foul. But one day, around 2008, because Croupy gets hired to work at the local high school that Sissy teaches at, and he starts teaching English classes there. Sissy and Croupy, they're both really popular teachers, but he's only teaching there on a probationary period. You have to get your master's degree, and Croupy doesn't have his master's yet. The only problem with that is that the dude is kind of broke. But his wife, Sissy, believes in him, and she agrees to pay for it. So Croupy and Sissy enroll in a local college. And when the semester starts and it's time to go to class, Sissy shows up on time and she does really well in her classes. But Croupy doesn't. He doesn't show up to his classes at all. And he uses it to subscribe to a bunch of adult websites, and he also spends a lot of it at local strip clubs, just tipping strippers with his tuition money. And over time, he starts using that money to purchase prostitutes. And it's around 2009, so Croupy pays Miss Pumpkin money and they start smashing. And so while Sissy is spending all her money on bills and food and paying for them to both complete their education, Croupy just keeps spending all his money and the money that Sissy's giving him on adult websites and strip clubs and smashing with hookers. And 3 years pass, and it's now 2012. Because Sissy, she starts getting suspicious of Croupy. So she goes through his phone and she finds a number that she doesn't recognize. Then she does a reverse search on that number and she can see that it belongs to another woman. That woman being Miss Pumpkin. So Sissy gets super pissed off, and rightfully so. She feels betrayed. So she starts looking up information about marital separation because she's making plans to leave Croupy. And around this time, she ends up getting a letter in the mail letting her know that she has officially graduated with honors. But then she notices that Croupy didn't get such a letter. He didn't get any letter at all. So she investigates. I assume she calls the college. And that is when she learns that not only did Croupy never graduate, but he never even attended classes. Not only that, but she also learns that he had taken more than $50,000 that her parents gave her to give to him for tuition, and he spent it on strip clubs and hookers. The principal of the high school that they work at noticed that he still hasn't earned his master's degree, so he gives him an ultimatum. Get your degree or you're fired. So Croupy's entire life is about to collapse. And here is where things get really dark. That it's time to confront her husband about all of this, about the lying, and as soon as he wakes up, she lays into him. And she tells him that she knows everything he's been up to and that she's gonna leave him. And Croupy, he doesn't take this well. He freaking snaps, and they start yelling at each other, and suddenly, boom, he pushes Sissy down the stairs, and this knocks her out of commission. Then, Croupy goes, and he gets a knife, and he stabs her over and over again, 15 times. So now, Croupy has to figure out how to cover this up, and he decides, I'll just make this look like a robbery gone wrong. So he starts trashing the house and trying to make it look like a burglar broke in. Then he leaves, and he goes out and he starts running errands and making sure that he's on different security cameras. He stops by the school where they work, and while he's doing all that, I guess he gets in the mood to smash. So he gets on his computer and he looks up some escort sites and he calls up Miss Pumpkin. And then they meet up at a local motel and they smash. And when they're done, he goes back home and he finds his wife's body there and he finally calls 911 and he pretends to be shocked. And pretty quickly, police arrive and they start investigating. And of course, they ask Croupy where he's been today and he gives them a list of all the activities that he's been doing. And so they go and they check it all out and they find him on different security cameras at all those places he went to. So it's looking like Croupy might actually get away with all this as long as he didn't screw anything up. 3 days after the murder, Croupy moves back in with his parents. Even so, he's still seeing Miss Pumpkin on the regular. And at one point, he meets with her and he tells her that his wife was recently murdered and that he doesn't know why someone would do that. But he also mentions that the murder happened on the day that they met up to smash at that local motel. And he also tells her that he lied to the police about where he was that day. Meanwhile, the police are still investigating, but they haven't made much progress. But then they get into Sissy's phone. And there they find a phone number saved under the name Woman. And they track it down to Miss Pumpkin. Apparently, Sissy had gotten Miss Pumpkin's phone number from Croupy's phone, and she had saved it into her own phone. And so police go and they question Miss Pumpkin. And she immediately tells them that, yeah, she and Croupy met up the day of the murder and they smashed. And so now police are really suspicious of Croupy because, he lied. And so eventually they get a warrant to search his computer, and there they find his Google searches for things like how to cut a throat, how to break a neck, and how to clean up a crime scene of his searches for adult websites and escort sites. Bam! They arrest Croupy. Here's his mugshot. And ultimately, he goes to trial, and he's found guilty, and he gets sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.